What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me here, Maximum Impact with Jay Cameron. And as you can see, I have a truly, truly special guest. He's the man. His platform is just blowing up. He is bringing information for the African diaspora, those of us who descend from the continent of Africa, and we've been dispersed throughout the world. Mr. Joe Hotagua, Authentic African. What's going on, bro? How you feeling?
I'm feeling great, man. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I interviewed you, so now returning the favor. So
yeah, man, you caught me flowing. I was out there. We were out in Zanzibar, and I was just, I was just going for it. But it was good, man. It was. I thank you for having me on your platform and being able to share with your audience. I mean, your audience is huge, and you are really doing a lot of powerful things as far as bringing this information that we need. And so today, we have a really good conversation. We're going to be talking about the dual or multiple citizenships that are happening within the continent of Africa. And then we'll talk about Authentic African and some of what your vision is for it and some of your experiences. But to get this kicked off, man, I've been following you talking about the dual citizenship in Sierra Leone. We have them happening in Ghana now. I believe I saw something with Benin and then with Burkina Faso. What are some of your thoughts on the dual citizenship movement? And just know, here on Maximum Impact, you can flow. You don't have to. You can say what you got to say.
Yeah. I got lots of thoughts. So number one, obviously having citizenship in a country allows you to do two things that I think are really important for wealth creation, right? Starting a business and owning land, right? So in terms of those two pieces, I think they're really, really important. Now, the processes in which people have been going through and the way it's happened, I think some of us have a so
That's
yeah
me.
so
I was trying to put you up.
so some of the processes in which some of the countries go about doing it, I think some people have some challenges with, and some things are ever changing and ever they're fluid, let's say. And so
Okay.
I think the idea is a great idea, and I think it's important. And I also think there's two sides to it, right? There are a lot of folks that are from the diaspora that feel entitled, as if I've heard a lot of people say, I should have just gotten it and I should get it for free, and it should just be easily given to us because, Africans sold us in the slave trade and et cetera, et cetera. And I always have to remind people that, sometimes constitutions have to be rewritten. Amendments to constitutions need to be made to even include this. No country has to do anything. And so just like the country that we are currently in, the United States doesn't really love immigrants so much. Other countries have to protect themselves as well and through their processes. And the fact that they're doing this, I'm actually really grateful for. But because of a amendment to the Constitution, I have been able to become a dual citizen of Sierra Leone. So I'm actually grateful, but I have my thoughts about certain things that pose challenges for some folks, for sure. But overall, I think it's a great thing, and I think it's necessary if you want to start a business, or at the very least, buy land and try to do your part to build some wealth, whether generationally or for yourself.
Do you think that this is a play on Black Americans' emotions?
I think it is. But I also believe that in sales, a lot of times, that's why a lot of people who were psychology majors are in sales, right? I mean, at the end of the day, people don't like to be sold, but they like to buy, right? So give them what they're asking for, right? So yeah, it's a play on people's emotions for sure. It's a benefit PR wise for the countries that are doing it, but there are also benefits for the individuals who get the dual citizenship. So it's absolutely play on their emotions. I mean, when you go to some of these conversations, the folks who are in the front of the room will talk about the transatlantic slave trade and talk about coming home, right? A lot of the discussions is about coming home. And so, yeah, I absolutely believe that it is playing on it, but I don't think that's necessarily wrong. I think it's all dependent on how it's executed and the benefits that the people are getting by doing the citizenship. I think that if you're playing on someone's emotions, as long as they're getting a benefit, I don't see a problem with it.
All right, yeah, I definitely get it, and I agree with you 100%. I've been on several panels. One was in South Africa because they were trying to figure out how Ghana did what Ghana did with the year of return.
Right.
And then in Nigeria, I was in another discussion, and they were trying to figure out, how did Ghana do this, and what happened, and how can we get to that? Now, that was one of the things I talked about. I said Ghana was able to take advantage of the emotions of Elmina, Cape Coast,
Absolutely.
Sioux, and just that vibe. And then Ghana also has a unique kind of vibe to it anyway. That
Yeah.
I don't even think you can duplicate what's going on in Ghana. I think if everybody focused on really being unique to
Yep.
what they offer, because South
Yep.
Africa has something very unique to what it can offer that's very different from Ghana. And that was
Yep.
the one thing I was telling them. So, what are some of the benefits you think for someone who is a part of the African diaspora coming to Ghana or Sierra Leone?
Yep.
What do you think some of the benefits of having that citizenship?
Yeah, I mean, so what I mentioned before, right? Number one is being able to own land or at least lease land for a different price than other people, right? So Ghana has this leasehold situation where you can't technically own the land, technically, but you have a lease on it for either 50 years as a non-citizen, 99 years as a citizen. So, 50 years might be within your lifetime, 99 years might be within your children or your children's lifetime. And so it does add a benefit in terms of holding on to the land for longer before you have to renew that lease. So that's in Ghana. In Sierra Leone, land ownership, it just allows you to own land, period. And so for me, and I've had this conversation with many folks, buying land for a lot of folks, you may have like $12,000, but if you want to buy a certain amount of land, it's very difficult to go through that process of buying land because of all the things coming out of redlining previously and what you know not in my backyard and all these different things that people do in different pockets of the United States that make it difficult for people like us to buy land in certain areas. So this allows you to just buy land free and clear and through obviously processes. So that's one big part of it. The other thing is starting a business, right? I think many people, when they come to the continent, they start getting ideas for businesses that they want to start. And especially because there's so many diasporans there and there are so many things missing from what we're used to having in the West. And you want to service those folks. And you want to do it legally within the country and, within the country's confines and their rules. And a lot of times that requires you to be starting a business. And it's a little bit harder to do so if you're not a citizen. And then the final thing is once you become a citizen in one country, specifically in West Africa, it allows you to travel around all the rest of West Africa on that passport. So you don't have to, as an American passport holder, you have to get a visa for each country, except a few, for each country you want to visit all over West Africa. So for me, as a Sierra Leonean passport holder, or for you as a dual passport holder in parts of West Africa, you could travel to Nigeria, you could travel to Benin, Togo, wherever you want. And if you wanted to drive through all of them, you can do that too. Right? That is something that is afforded to you, which I think is really important because I went to Lagos on a whim. And I didn't have to think about, all right, I need to get my visa together and apply for a visa and go through a process. I just flew to Lagos from Accra when I was living in Ghana. And I went back and forth between Ghana and Sierra Leone about 15 times in the 4 years that I was there. And I also could stay longer in certain countries than other people for a lower price. So like in the United States, you overstay your visa, you got to hide from ICE, right? But most other countries in West Africa, if you overstay your visa, it's a fee you have to pay them every month.
Right.
And so as a West African passport holder, the fee is way lower than if you are a non West African passport holder. So that's another benefit that I would say for having citizenship for sure. And also it's a pride thing, When Hove said I got 5 passports, I'm never going to jail, I thought it sounded cool, right? I was like, oh, that sounds cool. But it also is a pride thing. I have 2 passports. And yeah, the US passport allows me to travel probably more places
It does.
around even Africa outside of West Africa
It
than
does.
my Sierra Leone passport allows me to. But it is still something that I can wear as a point of pride for myself because I wear the bracelet every day that shows that I'm from Sierra Leone, that I represent.
Salon. Yes.
But I also now can represent in terms of as a dual citizen. So that would be what I would say is the benefit for sure.
When it comes to starting businesses, and this is one of the things that because I saw in one of your talks about the 300 Lebanese or whoever it was that I happened to be at that um, ceremony,
Yep.
and I came out. It was all the black folks were in the one ceremony, so I was there
Mhm.
with all the celebrities and Dr. Umar and everybody. Then we came outside, it was like a whole gang of somebody else out there. I was like, well, wait a minute. What's this all about? So I felt good that they at least made a wait, but but I was like, okay.
Right.
Now for me with my Ghanaian citizenship, it was always about business.
Right.
And when I say that, meaning I love Ghana. Everybody knows I love Ghana. I've done documentaries about Ghana. I've taken the majority of the people that travel with me to Ghana, children's books about Ghana, everything you can think of. But when it came to doing business in Ghana, there was this $200,000 thing that you needed. If you were not a citizen, you needed 200,000 US dollars to open a business.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, this is kind of steep to kind of, so that's when I understood that these citizenships were about business.
Right.
And, of course, the emotional component, the love and all of that. But when it came down to it, a country is a corporation, it's a business. And to your point earlier, if there's a benefit for someone who's doing it, whether they use emotion or not, if we learn to take advantage of what's in front of us,
Yep.
then it could definitely position us on a global scale. How have you seen anyone actually succeeding after they've gotten the citizenship, whether it be Sierra Leone or someplace else, and really establishing themselves in any of the countries?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of examples. I mean, I will say, not everyone who has an idea should have a business. So number one, right? So let's just be very clear on that,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Most businesses fail in the United States. And so we're talking about in a foreign country for most people, right? So
Yeah.
let's just be very clear on that. So, but I have seen some folks who've gone through the process and have made it work. People with restaurants, people with clothing lines, and clothing businesses. Yeah, I mean, so yes, to answer your question, yes, I have seen it work. But I've also seen many people think that they're going to start a business. And I think this is an important thing to talk about too. People who visit the continent of Africa for the first time have all these emotions happening and they get all these ideas, especially if you go to Cape Coast, right?
Yes.
And you start seeing you start seeing all the opportunity and you just assume that these people don't know any better. I can start a business. Right. And you don't realize how many PhDs, how many people who are in business already have already thought about that thing. And there's a reason why they didn't do that business. Right.
Right.
And there's a reason why that business isn't there. And like, for instance, I knew a person who started a restaurant and they were like, there's nobody selling this kind of food. This was in Sierra Leone. And they were charging European prices, but they didn't realize that 90% of the people that were visiting the restaurant were local. And the average person in Sierra Leone makes $50 a month. So they cannot spend $25 on a meal.
Right.
Right. And they never even thought that through. Right. They had just come for the first time in 40 years. They had a little bit of cash. They're like, oh, there's an opening in this particular building right here. It used to be a restaurant. So I'm going to buy this, or I'm going to rent it out, and then I'm going to start this business. And so I do also want to mention that, yes, there can be successful businesses here, but I also like to caveat that with, make sure you do your research before you start any business. Do not think that just because it's Africa, you can skip following processes or you could skip doing due diligence like you would do in any other market to start a business. So many people they get so full of emotions, they just jump right in and start doing stuff without thinking through. You need to know the market. Like, do you know that the average person makes about $75 a month in Ghana? If you know that's the case and 90% of your customers are going to be that group, you have to know that your margins or the products that you're selling are going to have to be priced in a range that they can afford.
Yeah.
So I that wasn't your original question, but I just wanted to throw that out there for people who are making the decision, because I've heard it every trip I go to Ghana, and every person who I talk to is like, I got a business idea. And then they tell me about the business idea, and I'm like, all right, who are your customers going to be? I mean, of course, the locals. There's like 9 million people in the country. I'm like, do you know what the average income in the country is? It's not the United States. The average income in the United States is what, like $30,000?
Right. Somewhere around there. Yeah.
Between $30,000 and $40,000 a year. In Sierra Leone, it's $50 a month, and in Ghana, it's $75 a month. So if you know that, I think you would probably think differently about what kind of businesses you're going to start, if that's going to be the constituency you go after for your business.
Well, a lot of people actually try to look for business going after the expat community.
That's true too, and that's probably the best place to go, especially because you understand that you understand that community more because you're one of them generally. And they tend to have more money, right? I mean, the folks that are coming there spent at least $2,000 on the flight, right? And so, and then they're spending however much their money they're spending on housing. And if it's in Sierra Leone, for those people who are getting their citizenship in Sierra Leone, they're spending 4,000 plus, right? So these folks do tend to have a little bit more disposable income. And so, yeah, if that's who you're targeting, then you're much more likely to have success targeting that group because you understand them and their mindset a little bit better, and they probably have a little bit more disposable income for sure.
Now, I know you wanted to share some information with us,
Yes.
and I'll bring that up on the screen because I know that you are. One, I was very impressed when you were with us out in Tanzania. Very impressed with just how you present everything. I mean, you're very thorough, and I enjoy your content. You know, so it's like I could tell you think things through, and that's a good thing. And we need more brothers out here thinking. We need more brothers out here. That's the first thing.
For sure.
So that's the first thing. We need more brothers out here.
Yeah.
But brothers that think and really have something to say is really encouraging, and I think that it's a breath of fresh air. So here's some information. So let's talk about the debunking the lies about this citizenship, because everybody's hearing it. You can get citizenship, you pay $150,000, you can get it in 6 weeks, you can get citizenship if you turn green tomorrow. So let's break this down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I can start with, because that slide here was helping people understand what's different from an update that I had given before. So I think this is the best slide. So cool. Sierra Leone has 3 pathways to get citizenship confirmed. And then there are 2 pathways that got everybody confused and upset last November and December, right? So let's talk about the 3 that are actually confirmed and approved by the Sierra Leone government. And then the other 2, we can talk about it because you mentioned it and people keep talking about it. So the first way is through naturalization. Every country has this process. In the United States, you might know it as getting a green card first and then eventually becoming a citizen. You just basically have to live in the country, specifically in this case, Sierra Leone, for 5 years, following the law and contributing to the country's development. They can determine what that means. And you can become a naturalized citizen living in the country. There's also the option of doing citizenship by descent. This is how I got my citizenship in this picture on the right-hand side. So I was born to 2 parents that were born in Sierra Leone. So there's some documentation you have to share, and really only supposed to be 1 parent. I just happen to have 2 parents born in Sierra Leone, but you have to have a government level documentation. So marriage certificates, birth certificates. There are documents that you have in the United States that confirm your parents' citizenship in Sierra Leone. Also, having them have a passport is a simple way as well, because it shows that they have citizenship in Sierra Leone. So that's how I got my citizenship. And then there's the African diaspora accession, and let me take a step back, actually. By the way, this descent citizenship was a amendment to the Constitution. It was written out of the Constitution, and then it was rewritten back into the Constitution under 2 presidents ago. Okay. And so that allowed myself to get citizenship. And then underneath that came the African diaspora accession as well. So where Jay was able to get his citizenship in Sierra Leone, tracing DNA heritage and coming through one of 6 approved tour operators in Sierra Leone. And then the 2 that got a bunch of people confused and upset was fast track naturalization and heritage naturalization. So to be very clear, if you read the press release, it's written by someone with a phone number in South Africa, not even in Sierra Leone. So if you just do a little bit of research, all right, most official documents from the government of Sierra Leone has the 2 lions on it. It has Sierra Leone stamps, right? Like, it's from Sierra Leone. This is just like a Word document. Doesn't even have any stamps. So it's not, the document wasn't officially, like if you read the article and then you click on the link, the document is just like a Word doc or maybe a PDF. Now, to speak to what they said was being offered was if you invest $140,000 in a program, it grants you citizenship within 90 days. That would be if you're not a descendant of Africa. So all the Europeans and folks from other nationalities from around the world. Heritage naturalization was investing $100,000 in a program that grants citizenship, and that was within 60 days, and that was for folks with African ancestry. It did not offer much more in terms of details beyond that, but it got a bunch of people upset because this came out right as there had been a pause on the African diaspora session last year, and it wasn't clear what they were going to be doing moving forward with that. So somebody snuck these two in, and people thought these two were replacing the African diaspora accession program, and that's what I think upset a bunch of folks. It did not replace that program, but this program has been updated, and that is what I go on to discuss further. Any questions on any of this that you think people might want to know before I move?
Well, it's good information because I know the topic of citizenship is here,
Yep.
and people are wondering. Of course, I get questions about, well, how'd you do two of them? But I put in the sweat equity, so that's a whole nother level.
Mhm.
But the way I got my citizenship in Sierra Leone is because of my ancestry, and so now we understand that there are more companies
Yes.
that are offering the citizenship. So let's talk a little bit about that. And that whole process, how that goes on. Unless you wanted to talk about something else before we got there.
No, absolutely. And that was perfect. That's a perfect lead into the next slide. So on the upper right-hand corner, well, let me take a step back. When Jay got his citizenship and everybody before November of last year, it was only through African Ancestry. African Ancestry was the only company that the country of Sierra Leone recognized. And at that time, African Ancestry, or for a while until recently, African Ancestry was the only one that tied you to a tribe, right? The other ones usually tied you to a country. African Ancestry ties you to a tribe. It's also Black owned, right? So one of the major changes with the new Ministry of Tourism and the Monuments and Relics Group is they've decided to open it up to 4 companies now. So 23andMe, owned by Ann Wojcicki, sister of Susan Wojcicki, who runs YouTube or ran YouTube. So they don't really need your money, but if you want to go through them, you can. There's also AncestryDNA, which used to be Ancestry.com, right? You might have seen those yearbook commercials since like 2001, right? What is interesting about Ancestry.com, it is not Black owned, but they do connect you with family other places if you want to be. So I do know folks who have done the Ancestry program through Ancestry.DNA, and they have connected with like long lost relatives from different parts of different countries. So
I
there,
definitely have. I have a whole new family as a result of Ancestry D.
okay, there you go.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah,
So you're a testament to that. And then
I am.
the fourth option is CRI Genetics, which I've never heard of.
I've never heard of them either.
So prior to this, I've never heard of them, but they're an option. So these 4 are the options you can go through now. So that is a major shift from just African Ancestry. Is now there's 4 companies that you can go through. Now the other piece of it is, the next step is there are 6 approved tour operators. From what I understand, there are 2 or 3 that are applying for tour operation. So this group here, tourism is Life Tours, VSL Travel, who I've interviewed, IPC Travel, Danfo, he's known as Dynast, but that's his company.
Okay, Dynast. Okay, yeah. All right.
Salon Hidden Gems is also approved. And African Ancestry, of course, is an approved vendor here. So African Ancestry is the only company that is on both lists, right? They're the tour company and also one of these other companies that you can go through. They did seem to kind of have the monopoly on this process, right?
I was gonna walk down that road for I was gonna go there. I was gonna go there.
So I'll let you go there.
Well,
So what are your thoughts on that? Like, because
I think
before we get into the rest of it, because I do think it's important to call that out, right? As you can see, they're in both places, right? They're one of the 6 approved tour companies, and they were the only company for a while that was allowed to do the Ancestry. So what were your thoughts on that?
Well, my thought is that I think the more opportunities, you avoid the potential of any gatekeeping. And so when you have a wide open pool, there are clearly more people who are on Ancestry, DNA, and 23andMe, although they're not Black owned.
Right.
But there are more people who are part of the African diaspora for whatever reason they've taken those tests. Now, the good part is that and this is what I found the good part about with African Ancestry, was that it was able to link me to so many different. I had other family members taking the swab. So my father's sister took the swab for their maternal line because
Mhm.
my father passed away. So I was able to find out I descend from the Mafa people in Cameroon as a result of that.
Okay.
So I'm the Timide people in Sierra Leone. Spanish Portuguese descent because everything doesn't always show up African on African ancestry. So and that's not to their fault or anything like that. I mean that's just the way the DNA flows. So I think I've probably had so many people. I think if they ever run the names of like their top customers, I'm sure my name is in the top 10 somewhere from like if they look at individuals who've purchased the kit. So I think that's a good thing. But when it comes to really people being having access to citizenship and the opportunities, their database is limited.
Yep.
That's just the reality of it. And
Yep.
so more people kind of gravitate towards Ancestry and 23andMe simply because of the price point.
Yep.
But then I'm also one who I'm a comprehensive kind of person. There are some limitations with African ancestry because you can only get the specific that whatever that marker is can only take you to one specific line, and you have thousands of lines in your
Right.
genetic history. So it's not
Right.
just one line; it's thousands of lines. And
Right.
that's when people say, "Yeah, I'm 99% Yoruba." I'm like, "Yeah, you're 99% Yoruba on that one line."
Right. Right.
It's, you probably got some airway in there and
Yep.
some T-car and some something out of Europe, So I think the good part about all of this is that now it gives us, as those of us who are part of the African diaspora who might not have taken one way only, now they're able to say, okay, how can I partake of this? Some people may sit back and say, you know what, I'm not even interested in, becoming a dual citizen or anything like that, but at least I want to go and see and explore what the opportunities are. And so for so many years, we have been kind of like in this box, where it's like or we've thought we've been in a box. And I think the more avenues that we have to explore and to see is very beneficial. And so that's just the way it is. Whether it's black owned, white owned, or whatever, it's about how we can take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to us as a broader African diaspora. And it's about the 43 million in the U.S., the 110 million in Brazil, the 7 million in France, however many million, the 5 million in Haiti, and many other millions in the Caribbean. And I think that it just creates more conversation, creates more opportunities, and that's my thought. So
That's
I don't
all
know.
great. All great points. And to just I don't have much to add because you said it all. Just the one other thing is, if you've already done Ancestry or 23andMe, you don't have to do a new test, right? Like you now can, now that you know this information, you can just go, right? And you can now qualify for citizenship. So I think that's hugely important because, as you said, AncestryDNA is probably the biggest of the four we're talking about here, and 23andMe is probably bigger than African Ancestry. I would imagine it is, as well as they do with their marketing. I've seen their ads all over YouTube and everywhere else. Of course, I've seen them on YouTube. So with that, I do want to also mention one of the things that go beyond the 6 already approved tour companies, which are the same approved tour companies as always, but again, there are 2 or 3 pending. Now that there's these 4, there's now 3 additional companies you can go through for testing. There is an additional piece where you are required to do 2 trips to Sierra Leone as opposed to just 1 trip. So in Jay's time, he went once,
I
and that
remember
was enough to do all the documentation, do the naming ceremony, go to your tribe, the whole thing. You could do all that in one. Now it is spread out over 2 trips, and and from what I understand, it is a year later. So if you went in November, you have to go back in November. If you went in April, then you go back in April the following year. You don't have to pay the same amount you had to pay the tour companies the first time. I think it's just, and I think it's, from what I understand, it's all inclusive in what you paid the tour operators. You just have to kind of finalize the process when you go back the second time. And I think that is to deter folks from never coming back.
Yeah.
That has been a challenge, you
Oh,
know.
I know. People got them paperwork and they rolled out. You didn't see them anymore. Now they're on social media talking about, yeah, I'm a dual citizen, and the whole point of it is to be able to bridge the gap. I get it. I think that's fair. I think there should be some skin in the game.
Yep.
For this from a business perspective. I don't think it should be where if they're gonna be passing out citizenships like that, then I
Right.
think some folks should, because I mean, in my experience, in my life,
Hmm.
that when people don't have any skin in the game or they don't have any investment in it, they don't value it the same way.
Yep.
So I've been to Sierra Leone several times since I got my citizenship
Right.
and spent time on the ground. And as a matter of fact, I look forward to getting back to Sierra Leone a little bit later this year,
Okay.
and really working between the two countries, because I fell in love with Sierra Leone. The mount, I mean, when you catch that ferry in, that ferry is something else. You catch that ferry coming across and you see that mountain right there, and you just look, and then when you go to some of the restaurants that are on top of the mountain, and you just like, wow, this is a beautiful place, and you understand why why the British and others found favor in that particular part of the world. But yeah, man. I mean, I think it's now is Fode's company on here?
Fode, what's I don't know Fode very well. Is
Okay,
he
I'll find out, because I know he's doing a tour, and so I know that
he
he.
might be IPC or
Okay,
Tourism
okay,
is Life. He might be one of those two. Because I know Bimbala owns VSL. I know Dory owns this. Damfo is Dynast and African Ancestry. So he might be IPC or Tourism.
okay, cool. Because I'm familiar with everybody on here. Dory, obviously, Dynast, Fode, and then African Ancestry. So and I can say that when I went, I had a great time, and learned a lot. When I went for the first time and got my citizenship, so I had a really good time. And I just know that when you go, it's something, if because I mean, I was looking, some friends of mine. I mean, we went through their ancestry, and when they found enough Sierra Leone in there, it was enough. It was
Right.
enough. And so it was like, well, there you go. And I think it was ancestry.com, Ancestry DNA.
Okay.
They found enough. So what should, I guess, with this though, because I saw a clip where you talked about people might want to take advantage of this now and not
Yeah.
delay, not procrastinate this thing. Why do you say that?
Well, because of the third check mark here. And it is now open to anyone who has more than 50% of the DNA from any West African country.
Mm,
So that is a lot of people, right? And if you guys saw that in Ghana, 500 people and then 300 people within a 3-month span got it,
I
you can
saw it.
imagine once this gets out, the infrastructure may not be there to kind of handle the large numbers, right? We are dealing with West Africa, and we know how things can get jammed up and
I
logged
do.
in, right? So that's why I say if you are interested and you're ready and you got the money, do it now, because by this time next year, it is going to be flooded with folks trying to get in here and get citizenship, and it may change. It may change to reduce some of those things, right? Because they're going to have to try to handle the large influx. So far, I think from what I understand in Sierra Leone, it's been a total of 500 or so people in the 6 years that they've been doing the DNA ancestry. And so I can imagine that it will be 500 in a year, this coming year, with everybody finding out that this is available. So that is why I tell people, I mean, if you think about it, how many people are going to have more than 50%? Because if you just add up from 3 countries in West Africa, you're going to have your 50%, right? So how many diasporans in the United States are going to fit under that category,
Well,
right?
let me say this. I have 75%. And well, okay. I have, all right. So I got about 10% Kenyan. And then I go down to the south. I have probably about 5 or 6. And I don't know if you don't, do they consider Congo and Cameroon West Africa? I know they kind of like, I'm
Congo and
central.
Cameroon
I'm
don't count.
central.
They don't count. They count as central.
Well, I'll put it to you like this.
Yeah.
Nigeria, in Ancestry DNA, I'm 49%
All
from
right.
the
There you
region of Nigeria. And every time I go to Nigeria, they think I'm Igbo. So it's like,
go. Yeah.
but I mean, so many of us have that large percentage. And then they're saying anybody from Ghana. So like Ghana can go too, or is this for the diaspora?
Anyone? No. So anyone with West African DNA. Now you have to do the DNA test, right? So it doesn't really matter where you're from, right? It's just if
Right.
you've done the DNA test and you're willing to pay the fee, right, which is $4,000 to $5,000 or whatever that is, right?
Gotta
So
pay
you can be
fee.
from
Right.
Ghana if you want, yeah. So it's just anybody with DNA from West Africa, but it's you have to do the DNA test, right? So you can't just say like I'm born and raised in Ghana, so I'm in it. You got to go
Yeah.
through this process. So you still have to go through one of the tour operators. You still have to take the test from one of these 4 companies. But if you do that, and it's from any of the West African countries, and so it's and then so the West African countries are these guys, the ECOWAS countries. So that's the group here that's on screen. So that's 15 countries that are part of were part of ECOWAS. I know Mali. Oops. So I know that Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. These 3 countries here, they're called the AES, or the Sahel states. They have removed themselves from ECOWAS, but you are still considered part of West Africa. So there may be some differences in terms of traveling between the countries, which, by the way, they've all said anybody from West Africa can come to our country. But there may be some government challenges between the countries. But as long as your DNA is from any one of these 15 different countries, you qualify. So, and it has to be more than 51%. So as long as it's more than 51% from any one of these 15 countries that were formerly ECOWAS or just West Africa in general, this list here, you qualify.
All right, now I'm gonna ask you some questions here because inquiring minds are curious and they want to know.
Yep.
Now, a lot of folks are trying to get these dual citizenships because they're trying to flee America because they're afraid of what the current administration might be doing, and they might be, they're saying, "Oh, I need to go somewhere where I can get away from all of this." Are they really getting away from all of this by having dual citizenship, or how? What are your thoughts on that? Because I have thoughts, but I asked you on, so I let you be on the hot seat this time.
Yeah, so it depends on what all of this means, right? So, every country has its challenges for sure, right? So, if you want to get away from gun violence, then this area is where it's at, right? Because it's very hard to own a gun here, right? And we don't have Iran-Contra and all kinds of other ways where guns come into the country and out of the country, whatever. So the guns are very difficult to come by in many of these countries. So you rarely hear about mass shootings, right? So whether that's in school or elsewhere. I think 4 of these countries are ranked higher than the United States on the Global Peace Index. Now, some people might argue not every crime is reported everywhere else. So there may be some arguments there, but most crime anyway is committed by people in families, right? Most domestic SA and all the other things is usually committed by people who know each other. Not much random crime happens. I mean, petty theft and things like that. So it depends on what you're trying to escape, right? So if you're trying to escape a government that you think is too bureaucratic or does things that you don't agree with, then West Africa is not going to be where you want to go. Because every government, including all over West Africa, is going to do things that you don't agree with and that you don't like, right? And just because the political parties aren't exactly aligned the way they are in the United States doesn't mean they don't hate each other and still operate in the same way, and they do things to sabotage each other, which, just like in the United States, you might see that happen. It also happens in West Africa too, right? So I'm not calling out any particular country, because the other thing that I think is very important to know is we, as folks who grew up in the United States, the First Amendment, because it's the first one, most people think it's the most important one. And maybe you might agree with that. And that's the freedom of speech. That is not something that is written into amendments in constitutions around West Africa. Freedom of assembly is also in there. It's not necessarily the same in constitutions around West Africa. So one thing you have to know is, if you're not liking it, here in the United States, generally, it's easy to get a permit, even if you are the wildest of people. You can get a permit to march about something, right? They kind of just let even the KKK and all kinds of, the whole Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, right? They were able to get a permit, right? And thousands of people were marching, saying the wildest stuff, right? Not the same across West Africa. You guys might remember the NSARS movement in Q4 of 2020 when the police opened fire on protesters in Nigeria. In Sierra Leone in July of 2022, I think it was. Don't quote me on the year. 27 people lost their lives protesting against the government in Sierra Leone.
Okay.
I think 21 of them were civilians, 6 of them were police. So these are all things you have to take into consideration. There are many differences. I will say different people have different experiences just being diasporans coming to the continent, and people have different experiences on their treatment, et cetera, et cetera. I will say though, what I find is most people who make the move to West Africa, many of the friends I had in America was because they were Black, right? Like because we had similar cultural backgrounds, but we were definitely different people, right?
Got it.
Like different belief systems and different people. What I find in West Africa is many of the people that are planning to make the move are along the same mindset. So many of the people that you meet, you become like family with. So, so are you escaping everything? I don't know. There are a lot of things that are challenges in West Africa that you may not have in America. There are different things that you have in the United States that you don't have in West Africa. So I would say most people's problems are actually self-inflicted, right? I think your circumstances are 90%, sorry, 10% what happens to you, 90% how you respond to it. And so moving to a new location is not going to change your mindset or change the problems you have that you haven't solved that are generally issues that you're dealing with wherever you are. So don't just think that you're going to move somewhere and it's just going to magically change everything for you. So so yeah, that's my thought there. I don't know if I need to add any more, but
No,
that's
I
my
mean, that was great because again, sometimes people are saying, okay, I need options and I need to get out of here because I don't know what the current administration is going to do, and I'm looking for somewhere else to go. But then with that, might not be considering, what is on the other side. Might not be thinking about, okay, well, I'm going to have to go through a cultural learning curve, or there are going to be some things that I'm going to need to adjust.
right,
My mindset may have to adjust. My expectations might have to adjust. So it's not like I'm just going to uproot and move somewhere else, and then everything's just going to flow,
right,
like peaches and cream and milk and honey. So it's kind of like
yeah.
but managing those expectations might be a good thing. What do you think the play is though? Why all of this sudden interest in the African diaspora between all of these countries? Whereas
Yeah,
before you couldn't even get a Ghana card without stress, and you got to go
yeah.
through all the drama, and you had to jump through all these hoops. Now it's like here's the floodgate. So what do you think the play is here? Because there's something at play. This is the way this world works. So what do you
Yeah,
think the play is?
absolutely. I think a lot of people copycat what other people do. So, well, let's start with the fact that Ghana's first president under, after gaining their quote unquote independence from the UK, Kwame Nkrumah was a Pan-Africanist. He taught at universities in the United States and in Europe. So he had been in communication with Pan-Africanists all around the world. And what he did as president is he brought Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Nina Simone came. W.E.B. Du Bois was gifted a house by Kwame Nkrumah. He actually ended his days, like he lived out through the rest of his life in Ghana. And so I think that opened the door to the communication between the diaspora and West Africa. I think that it had its ebbs and flows. Like it definitely was big during that time. I mean, Marcus Garvey with the Black Star Line, even though it didn't get off the ground the way he wanted it to. And with the, removal of Kwame Nkrumah from office, by the CIA. So another
Right.
conversation.
Yeah.
That kind of stopped what he was trying to do, and administrations changed, people change. But I do think every country is looking for a way to kind of have the same level of public relations that the United States has. Because no matter what the United States does around the world, and no matter how much Americans complain about the United States, it's still a destination that people still will die to
Absolutely.
try to get to, right?
Absolutely.
And to the earlier point, by the way, blue passport privilege is real. So don't just think that because you're pissed off about the 4 years or previous 4 years or 4 years before that, that you should just go run away. Because I am so grateful that I was born in Harlem Hospital 41 years ago because I don't know what my life would be like otherwise. So I do want to mention that. But so getting back to the topic, the year of return was huge, right? Shout out to Ivy Prosper and all the people who were involved in that process. I always like to shout her out because she was working on the social media, and I
Absolutely.
saw the social media that she was doing. That's how I became aware. And so they did a really good job of the year before the year of return with Diggy Simmons and a few folks like that, folks that are like, I think Wale was another person who's Nigerian, but he was there. And it started getting people wondering, like, what is this all about?
Boris
And so,
Kojo, I think he was there the year before too, because I think he's from Ghana. His father's from Ghana.
exactly. Boris Kojo was there. And so I think they started and they utilized that, right? And then that next year was this big event, right? Afro Nation. At the time, it was Afrochella. Now it's Afro Future. Had these big concerts, right? Dueling concerts, 2 in the same country with 1 day overlap. It was a big 2 days overlap. And a bunch of people came. They made about $3 billion in the 2 months or so around it. About 1 million people came. I think they offered 500,000 visas. And so it just the numbers really worked out for Ghana, and it's continuing to work out, right? I mean, obviously there's gentrification issues and other issues that people are dealing with as
Right.
locals, but in terms of how it has impacted them as a country and their public relations, I think they're just going to continue to lean into that because it's really worked for them. But as if I'm Nigeria though, I'm thinking to myself, we have a bigger diaspora, and we have our own Dirty December. How can we of course we'd like to replicate that. We'd like to have that same level of PR. Sierra Leone, I think, saw that, and it probably made sense to open it up to more people to have a similar situation, because I think every step along the way, anytime there was any bad PR about what happened in Ghana, there was something that followed it up with really good PR.
Right.
Ghana was named the best destination in Africa to go to on vacation. Ghana they're on top of the list on all these different things.
Second safest country to visit. I think
Exactly.
2024 was number one. They were to visit. Yeah.
Yeah, they keep moving up the global peace index, right? So there's always something positive. And then the numbers are crazy. The investment in Ghana. So the last time I looked at it was 2 years ago, and then last year. So it's from the previous year. So from 2022 and 2023. 2022, $500 million of tech investment went into tech companies in Ghana. The next year, it was over $1 billion, right? And so that number had increased dramatically in terms of investment in tech companies. So everything has increased for Ghana. So if I'm any other country, I'm wondering, how do I replicate that? And it may not have anything to do with the ability to bridge the gap and work together. It's just, as me and you talked about before, it's our business,
It's
right?
business.
And every business needs good PR. And Ghana gets earned media all the time for free. Like, and what I mean by earned media, I work in advertising. I have to remember what I'm talking about. To what does that mean? That means that they don't have to pay for that advertising. So when Vic Mensa and Chance the Rapper decide that they're going to do the Black Star Line Festival, right? They came to Ghana with that idea. Ghana didn't have to reach out to them to do that. And then, of course, a bunch of Chicagoans are wearing Bulls jerseys and really feeling Chicago. And like, there's this energy in Ghana that they didn't have anything to do with, right? And so I think everyone else is seeing that, and they want to jump on the bandwagon to have that same positive PR. That's just really what my belief system is. I think it's just that simple, as people just want to be able to replicate what they saw.
Yeah, I agree. I saw that when I caught. I'm not going to name the country. I'm not going to name them, but there was a country I caught spying on Ghana in Cape Coast.
Okay.
And everybody's like, "Hey, you need to go talk to him. You need to go talk to him." And at that particular time, I didn't have an interest in visiting this particular country, but I was like, "Let me go on over here and talk to these people." So I went and had a conversation with them, and they were very nice. And they're like, "You should come visit." And I was like, "Okay, you know what? I think I will." But when I went to go visit, it's a very nice place. It's actually one of my favorite places to visit,
Okay.
but they don't have tourism infrastructure.
Right.
So their industry is something completely different. So that's where I saw the challenge coming in. Even when it came to Sierra Leone,
Yep.
it's because the infrastructure might not be what
Yep.
someone you catch the ferry over. And I was having a conversation with someone pretty high up in Nigeria, and they're like, well, if they build a bridge, from the airport to to the mainland,
Yeah,
it might work better. But putting everybody on those ferries, they can't handle that much, um, back and forth. So those are things that I noticed. And having gone to Senegal, Senegal is built nicely for tourism, as well as let me think. Cote d'Ivoire is cool, but it's not. They don't have enough attraction for tourism. So
right,
you do Grand Bassam, you might go out to Mansion de Kula. You do a
right.
little bit in the city, have a great food life and a great nightlife. So so you got to find these different things to make it work. But I'm not sure about Mali and Burkina and Niger. I know Togo and Benin, they have
Yeah,
they're cool. But just being real with it, Ghana is kind of sitting in a very unique spot because their infrastructure, as many challenges as
hmm,
it has a history and enough infrastructure that can handle a certain level of influx.
agreed.
At that point in time. So I think if anything, what I would tell Sierra Leone is get the infrastructure because it has history too.
Absolutely,
So you can go out to Bunce Island. You have Cape Coast, you have Bunce Island.
right.
If you really think about it, Nigeria have Badagry. There are things that you can kind of incorporate, but that infrastructure. Now, let me say this. Now, Nigeria got a serious nightlife game and they got a food game too. Nigeria
Next level.
is yeah. Nigeria is a special place too, but tourism is not the thing.
Not the thing. And then there are other countries that are all about tourism, but they may not be able to accept that many people, like the Gambia.
Yes.
Like Europeans go to the Gambia all the time, and it's not a conversation for right now, but
Uh,
the ladies
I was
love
gonna
to
go there. I was gonna go.
they go to Gambia for some things. So yeah, I mean, look,
The
so
young boys better watch out. Young boys better watch out.
well, they get they're taking care of whole families now.
I know they get paid. I saw it with my own eyes.
Yeah, as did I. So yeah, I mean, so the Gambia is a tiny country of like what did I hear, 3 million people, but its entire infrastructure is built around the idea of tourism, but it's tiny, right? So it might be tough to take a large influx of people. So yeah, so many of the larger countries haven't focused on tourism, but they may be able to have the infrastructure or work to build it, right? Because as you said, I think the thing about Ghana that I think really works is much of what you're used to in the West is available in Ghana. It just might be different companies executing it.
Yes.
So for example, but the main company might still be there, like Uber. Most of us, if I've traveled all over Europe, I've been in different parts of the continent of Africa, Latin America, almost every country I've gone to, I've made that trip post Uber's inception. And they're kind of everywhere. So like since 2013, I've probably traveled the most. Yeah, that's where almost all of my travel has happened. And everywhere I go, even if I don't speak the language of the people there, Uber can just pick you up and take you to where you need to go.
Yeah.
And most people don't realize how impactful that is because many people don't remember life before that. But like Sierra Leone's life before that, right? So it makes it challenging to travel around Sierra Leone the way you might be used to when you travel to other countries, right? Because you do have to have a mode of transportation that works if you're not willing to take public transport, which means you might be on the back of a dirt bike, you might get on a three-wheeled tricycle that has, power. It's called a KK in Sierra Leone,
Yeah.
or or like a van that is maybe like a 25-year-old van, right?
Like a
So
tro
right,
in Ghana.
Trochos in Ghana, right?
Yeah.
So those modes of transportation aren't ideal for many people from the West, and so having had Uber, I think that's the other part of the infrastructure, the digitizing of the lifestyle there, right? You also have food delivery services that you can order from Bolt, Jumia. You can order food from restaurants that you like or that are nearby within a 3-mile radius or even further. So these are things that you might be used to doing in the States that are transferable to a country like Ghana. So Ghana and Nigeria also has that too, by the way. But like it's just perfectly set up to be able to take all these folks in. And so all the other countries that want to copy it probably need to copy some of the other things that Ghana has done in terms of outreach to the diaspora. Ghana started that way. So it was
Yes.
already built into their infrastructure. I mean, their flag is the Pan-African flag colors purposefully.
Yes. And that
Right.
probably goes back to Kwame Nkrumah if you really think
Exactly.
about it. We think
Yeah.
about because he was already, being at Lincoln,
Yep.
being a Sigma,
Yep.
So all these different things, his roots in the US, so he understood the culture.
Yep.
And even with Martin Luther King being there when Ghana gained its independence,
Mhm.
him being there that night, and then Muhammad Ali going, and Maya Angelou going, and so many other people. I'm sure Kwame Ture. I think he spent a little bit of time in Ghana as well. So you stop and you see where Ghana has been on this trajectory for some time,
Yep.
and I think that there's a level of there's a genuine sense when you get to Ghana that okay, they've had an emphasis here, whereas maybe now you might feel okay, somebody's trying to hop on, So that I think that part, if it's going to be now, Sierra Leone has that history as well, so they can kind of play to that. Nigeria has the history, but oil is their industry.
Right. Right. Right.
The one that I think that really could maximize from this, and I don't know if they're going to go about it the right way, is South Africa.
Right. Right. Because South Africa has all the elements, right?
Everything.
They have all of it. And movies,
Everything.
you all remember Serafina, right? So they have the movies, they do have it all. And by the way, they have the #1 healthcare system in Africa. So people, because that is something people do worry about, and that's something I didn't mention earlier, is my mother will be moving to Sierra Leone this year if all goes well.
Cool.
And it's likely that she'll be going to do her checkups in the United States twice a year, right? And other folks that I know who have moved and retired come to the US to meet with their primary care physician and their specialists. Most of those people, including the senior levels of government, do not get healthcare in country, right? They go to other countries, right?
Absolutely.
So that's another thing I didn't mention earlier. And so if you're trying to escape something, that our healthcare system has its problems for sure.
Right.
But I still have a primary care physician that I trust, and I have one in Ghana because he practiced in the West for 25 years. And so yeah, I mean, I don't have one in Sierra Leone currently, to be honest with you. And so for me, all of my healthcare happens outside of Sierra Leone. And so that is something you have to take into consideration if you are making the move, if you are planning to do that. When you get your citizenship. So to answer that, to further answer that question about escaping, right? I think if you're feeling like you're escaping something here, just remember the privileges that you have here. As much as you might dislike it, there's a lot of privilege here. So that came to mind because South Africa and Kenya are 1 and 2 in terms of healthcare on the continent of Africa, and then
Who would you say is number 3? Probably Egypt or Ethiopia, or maybe Morocco or Algeria. Somebody.
I think it's one of the North African countries. I don't know who's after that. But all of them are far from Sierra Leone or from Ghana, right?
It might be a little close, but it might be easier to get to the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. So just, and also depending on your passport status, right, from what country, also may be more challenging as well. So yeah, I think these are all things to take into consideration, but yeah, I think South Africa is primed to do it. I haven't been yet, but I know people who live in South Africa, and they have nothing but great things to say. I know someone who lived in Nigeria for 8 years and moved to South Africa to start a startup, and he's doing really well there.
I love South Africa. I love everyone asks me what my favorite African countries are. I don't have favorites, but I do have ones that I say, okay, where could I live?
Okay.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's my favorite, because I love Benin, but I couldn't live there.
Right.
I love Togo. I love to hang out. I love to, but I couldn't live there. But I could live in Ghana. I could live in South Africa.
Right.
And I could live in Kenya. And the reason why I say this is because of me doing business and needing to be able to navigate. Because Kenya and South Africa are Nairobi and Johannesburg and Cape Town, all that, they're very similar as far as infrastructure is concerned.
Right.
My heart is in Ghana. That's like the first, when the guy get his first love and all that. That's what Ghana did to me. The guy,
I
You
get
remember
it.
old Babyface on Whip Appeal. Ghana got me with the Whip Appeal. So let's see, Ghana did it to me. But but Sierra Leone is like Ghana has my heart, Sierra Leone has my soul. So it's a
Mhm.
real interesting kind of dynamic, and that's the beautiful part about being in the African diaspora because we have these options. I'll never give up my US dollar, not
Mhm.
because I love the US, but because I understand. I understand it. I have my primary too. I go to my dentist in the US. I mean, I've done my teeth cleaning in Ghana, but my dental is in the US. My medical is in the US because I
Right.
understand. And so I make my money in US dollars because I understand, So now, will I make my money in other countries' currencies? Yes, but I'm not giving up that US dollar, not until it collapses.
Right.
so,
Right.
so it is, some people are like, no, it's they call it all these different names, and I'm saying to myself, who controls the World Bank and IMF?
100%. And how does everybody else's currency get judged? Right. So at the end of the day, as long as that's the case, you better have money in that currency. That's it.
If you're
You
gonna play, ball, or you're gonna struggle, if you're trying to leave. My thing is this: I have both.
Yep.
I descend from Africa. I was born in America, so I can claim both. My ancestry, my heritage, my history, I love the connection. It has empowered me as a black man coming from the U.S. However, my ancestors in the U.S. did a whole lot of work over here for me able to have these privileges, and I'm not going to, shame them by like not taking advantage of the hard work that they put in and taking it to another level. So that's my perspective,
Yep.
and it works really well. I try to tell people, I say, if you really can grasp being a global citizen
Yep.
and take advantage of that blue passport privileges you talk about, it opens up a whole part of life that you might not have even known existed.
Agreed.
So I was hanging out in your city, this past weekend. I was in New York. I was like, man, okay. I had spent some time on Broadway, had a good time.
Yep.
But when I get back to Ghana, I'm gonna go right to my restaurants. I hang out at Sky Bar, Exhale Lounge,
Hmm.
and spend some time out at Cape Coast and have a great time. When I get to Joburg later in the year, I'm gonna go hang out in Santon City, then get down to Cape Town and go to Gold Restaurant. Have a great time, Go to One Africa Place right there in Nairobi. I'm just rattling off this is what happens. This is why it's good to have conversations with people who understand.
Yep.
When I get back to Sierra Leone, I'm going to my spot right there on the mountain and looking out over the ocean and just reflecting. So it's if someone is able to process it the right way, the possibilities are really endless, man. And I mean, I'm excited for what you're doing now. We talked a lot about citizenship.
Right.
To tell me a little bit about Authentic African and what you're doing, your platform. Everybody, be sure to subscribe and follow him on IG, YouTube. He's everywhere. You'll see all of his content popping up whenever you see Authentic African. Now you know it's Joe behind it. So tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, Authentic African, and I'll try to keep it short because it's a lot, but we are about 600,000 followers or subscribers across all platforms. The biggest is Instagram. YouTube is growing tremendously. The purpose of it is to really, it's to have the conversation online that I have been having at home.
Okay.
So, as someone who identifies in two different worlds, right? I was born to two different Sierra Leonean parents, but I grew up as a Black American. And I heard the conversations about each other, but they weren't happening to each other, right? And so I would always have to communicate on behalf of the other group, right? So, like, having to communicate about what it's like to have guns drawn on me by the NYPD twice and having to be stopped and frisked without ever committing a crime. That helps people from the African continent understand that not everybody who actually committed a crime may have ended up in a situation with the police that might have been a sticky situation, right? Helping other people understand how hard it is for someone to save the funds and raise the funds to come to America. Or so that's like the current circumstances. What about historically? Somebody like Thomas and Carr, Kwame Nkrumah. These are folks, and these are names that people in America might not know. And these people have fought just like the people in America have fought, which some of the Africans may not know. There are many folks who happen to be a part of the civil rights movement that made it so that those Africans can even be in the United States, right? And there are many folks that fought for certain things that make it so that diasporans can travel freely through the continent of Africa as Americans. And so my goal has been to share that information between the two groups, and then talk about how do we move, visit, or invest in the continent of Africa. How do you expand um, your views of how you generate personal wealth or grow financially yourself, right? So for myself, right, I practice what I preach. I bought land, so I show people what that process was like. I consult with folks and help them understand what it might look like to buy land in Sierra Leone. Or I interview people who are in the process of building or know about land ownership in Ghana. And so my goal is always to share information with these different groups so everyone can be better for it. And I don't think, you know, we get Africa to its rightful place on the world stage in individual silos, right? I think we have to work together to do that. And so I just I just want to do my part in terms of helping people understand each other a little bit more, and then understand how you as an individual in the diaspora, because it's what, $3 trillion a year in wealth in Black Americans in the diaspora, and well, just Black Americans actually. So how do we translate some of that to, instead of, you know, because I think, what is this, the dollar stays in the Black community for 6 hours or something like that,
So
and then
there's something like that, yes.
like 6 hours. So how do we translate that to investments somewhere else where you can benefit as an individual and they can benefit from the work, right? If you build a house in West Africa, you might be employing like 15 people by doing that. So you may not even be thinking about that, but just think about how many people you might be employing. So that is what I am doing with the platform. So you'll find all kinds of different stories about what's happening today and history. And then the other thing is, I'm relaunching sometime soon. I'm working on some merch, and also the e-commerce store, so that you as a diasporan can buy products from handmade products from artisans made on the continent. You can buy that in the diaspora, mostly for people in America, the United States. But that is kind of the next phase of it. That was what Authentic African was originally about, until I started the social media platforms, and I realized how much power was in helping people understand each other. And so then I completely shifted my focus from the e-commerce store to telling that story that I had been telling to these disparate groups, but now I'm helping them do it through the platforms online.
How do you reconcile the conversations? Because I know when I'm on social media, and now me being Black American, I catch a different flack, but they might not know your history.
Yeah.
I'll get the flack from the FBAs and the
Mhm.
ADOS, and they'll say, "Oh man, you know, we need to focus on here, right here at home,
Yeah.
and we don't need to, you know, be worried about Africans, and, you know, they sold us into slavery. They come over here and steal all our stuff. They don't like us anyway. They look down on us."
Yeah.
How do you navigate that in your discussions or in your content, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, it comes up a lot in the comments.
Yeah,
that's
yes.
that's where it shows up, right? The
It
comment
might pop up in these comments a little bit too, right?
for sure. So, you know, the way I discuss it is this: we can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? If you want to focus on that, you focus on that, right? There are many people who want to focus on something else, and they can do that, right? So, for me, the way I think that the best way to navigate that discussion is, I don't believe in black and white. There's a nuance, right? There's no one thing, right? So of course, I have land ownership, and I co-own a property in Washington State, right? So I don't think it makes sense not to do that. Of course, I'm planning to maybe have another property here in New York, or maybe in the DMV. I'm looking at different places. So I don't think that you shouldn't do both. But I think the idea of many folks who happen to categorize themselves in these different groups, a lot of their identity is about having an enemy,
Mm.
right? Like, you know, politicians do a really good job of this, you know, where they find an enemy, and that helps you gravitate towards them. So if you fall into one of these particular categories, you have to have an enemy, because that's what really focuses. First of all, it helps you to create content. It helps to get your message out there, right? Bad news goes much faster than good news. So if you feel like you have a common enemy or enemies with a group, then you'll do it, and then you'll focus on that. And so I do think a lot of those folks who fall into those categories, which by the way, it's not most of their leadership doesn't believe that, but a lot of folks who might be the loudest folks in the room
I got it. I got it.
or
Yeah.
the typers, people
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
keyboard,
Yeah.
um, they believe that if they have that common enemy, that gives them something to keep fighting for, fighting against. If you don't have an enemy, what is it that you're actually doing? Right? If you can't complain about that enemy, if you can't talk negatively about that enemy, then what are you doing if you're not actually doing the work? And many of those folks ain't really doing the work, right?
Mhm.
They're just talking. Right. So and that's the other thing. I don't take anything personally that comes up in the comments about me because you don't know me. And even if you knew me, you would never think that. And if you actually paid attention to what I'm working on and what I'm doing, you also wouldn't think that. But most people need an enemy. And so that's how I look at it. So yeah, I mean, knowing that that's how they are, sometimes I engage, most of the time I educate.
That's but by saying that, sometimes you engage, most of the time you educate, and that's that's the beautiful part of it, man. I think it's when someone is enlightened, because while there may be that one person
Yeah.
who's firing off in the comments, there's someone else out there who's really serious about learning, and they don't want to be controlled by any group. They don't want. They're like, listen, I just want the facts. Give me some information so I can make a decision for myself. They're able to dismantle and disengage from the emotions
Yep.
that sometimes, because they'll say, oh man, them Africans come on over here stealing all our opportunities. And I know a whole lot of Africans, from a lot of different countries, and that's not what their whole point is. They're trying to get back some of them stolen resources that the USA keeps stealing every year. They're just trying to, it's not a love affair with the US. They love their home, but they recognize that there's, some lack happening some places. And I think the benefit of educating people about the broader aspects of the story. And that's what I find on social media. Some people say, I didn't know that. And when they travel and they go and they see, they're like, wow, I get it now. I understand. And the things that they've been telling us and the things that we've been seeing, it's not quite the same. So what you're doing is powerful with Authentic African, because you're willing to put those topics out there. You're willing to have these discussions on your platform. Now you get together every Monday night. Is that when you have your lives?
Yeah, so I go live Sundays and Mondays now. So every Sunday, it's specific to Sierra Leone. I do a joint live stream with Sierra Leoneans Killing It, someone who featured me on their platform previously. And I talk about things happening in Sierra Leone or Sierra Leone diaspora. And then on Mondays, that's more broad in terms of the diaspora of the continent of Africa and what's happening across Africa. So yeah, so Monday, but definitely every Monday at 9 p.m. GMT. We got daylight savings going on in
I know,
America.
4 or
Sometimes
5 hours easy. Right. You don't know.
sometimes it changes in the US, but it's always going to be 9 p.m. GMT because I started doing it while I was in Ghana, right? So I started the YouTube channel when I moved to Ghana and I started it February 1st, 2021. And I also started the Instagram page February 1st, 2019. So there's obviously a commonality there, Black History Month, right? So there's a reason why I start these at these specific points in time. So yeah, so every Monday night I go live and we cover a wide range of topics. Yesterday we talked to someone who was a real estate agent that I had been looking at apartments with while living in Ghana, and she returned to the United States. And so I think it was important to tell her story, why she left, if she ever plans to move back, which she does. But I think, it's not all, like you said, it's not all, you can't look at everything through rose colored glasses. It's not all milk and honey, right? I think there are challenges that people go through. But I do like to talk about the broader experience. And I'm not just going to talk negatively about Africa, but I'm also not going to misdirect folks. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people end up leaving quickly because they went there with assumptions based on what they saw online that wasn't really what life really might be like. And then I also think some people online deter people. So my goal is to tell the holistic story so you have enough information to make a decision to either visit, move, or invest on the continent, right? That's always the three goals that I'm working on.
Well, everybody, we've been talking to Joe Hotagua from Authentic African, and he has been, sharing a lot of insight. And for those who are considering dual citizenship, definitely follow him and reach out to him if you have any questions. He's very familiar with dual citizenship in Sierra Leone, and of course, there are other countries that are now discussing this the options, and of course, Ghana has opened the door, and Burkina Faso seems to be opening the door, and Benin has opened the door, and I'm sure other countries along the way. But I always encourage you to visit wherever you're considering, because that way you'll figure out if it's a cultural fit, an economic fit. You can get your questions answered, and then you find out, all right, what is this process going to be like? I always encourage doing your due diligence, and when you do your due diligence and proper due diligence, then it can help you make the best decision for you and your family. So, man, Joe, we got to do this again. I appreciate you
Absolutely.
carving time out of your schedule. I know you're a busy man, and making things happen, whether you're in New York or Sierra Leone. But I always enjoy the conversations. I enjoyed the conversation we had when we were in Tanzania,
Absolutely.
and just looking forward to your continued success. Anything you want to share as we get ready to wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it all. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Before you move, visit and stay for a period of time, extended period of time, at least a month or so, because what you can spend in a week, $1,000, $2,000, whatever, that's not realistic for what it might be like. So you need to see what it's like to live long term somewhere. So I definitely say visit first, and of course, as always, continue to educate yourself as much as possible on the history of the places that you're planning to go to. Make sure you learn more about the culture of the country you're planning to go to too. I think a lot of people go to places with a mindset of, I came from a better place. And when you go to that place with that mindset, that's when you run into challenges with people accepting you and embracing you. So definitely go with an open mind and an open heart. Do some research before you go, and definitely visit. Definitely visit. Jay does like 1,000 trips throughout the however many years. So find one of Jay's trips, go on a trip, and get a little bit of history, get a little bit of culture, and have some fun when you go. But definitely visit for sure. So remove Punta Cana from the list and go to one of these countries.
Put the DR out there like that. Well, you know what, Joe? Thanks so much. And everybody, be sure to like, subscribe, and share both of these channels, if you will. You see Authentic African right there. And make sure that when you follow him, if you do get a chance to chat, let him know you saw it right here on Maximum Impact with Jay Cameron, and let him know that you're enjoying his content, and continue to share everything that he's doing, because that's how we bridge the gap in the African diaspora and continue to break down the walls of misinformation and disinformation. That's how we do it. We have to take responsibility for it, and nobody else is going to do it for us. So again, everyone, until next time, don't forget, like, subscribe, share. Take care. Be safe.